Hi everyone, this is Dorian from MedTech Trends channel, where we talk to digital health entrepreneurs about the work they're doing to improve the health and well-being of people like you and me. Now, if it's your first time on the channel and you want to learn more about digital health, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and check out our other videos. Today we have with us Rob Iaboni, who is leading the commercial operations at a digital health startup based in Toronto called CoHealth. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and if you do, hit the like button and leave your comments and your questions below. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi everybody, my name is Dorian. I'm hosting MedTech Trends. Today we have with us Rob, and Rob, I just want to be sure that I'm pronouncing your your last name correctly. Don't want to get that one wrong. But is it Iaboni?
Correct.
All right, awesome. Good to know. All right. So Rob is joining us today as an experienced business development professional. He's got a demonstrated history of working in the healthcare industry, and he's been working with a company called CoHealth. It's a digital health startup in Toronto over the last 3 years. And so Rob is responsible in that role for leading all commercial aspects of the company, and he's helped to grow the business a lot since joining back in 2017. He's also really passionate about the healthcare system in general. He loves interacting with patients and making sure that they're getting the best care possible. So thanks so much for joining us, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. So today we wanted to talk about a number of things. Obviously, the company GoHealth, it's been around for a couple of years, but it's also gained a lot of buzz in Toronto, and I think in the digital health space in general. There's a lot of great things coming out of the company, so we'll touch on that. But then we also wanted to talk a little bit about how you got started in the whole healthcare space, but then in addition to that, how you got into the startup area specifically. I know it's a big thing. A lot of people are kind of getting into that space, but I think there's something unique about healthcare specifically. So we'll touch on that. And
hmm
yeah, so just to start, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about how you either first heard about or how you first got involved in CoHealth.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2013, 2014, I was doing my master's in biotechnology. While I was doing my master's, unlike most of my peers in my class, I actually took a very untraditional route during my full year internship. So a lot of them went into the pharmaceutical companies, and I said, I don't know if those big companies are for me. So let's take a less traveled route, and let's work for a technology incubator. And what technology incubators are is they help small to medium-sized companies at any stage, whether you come to them with an idea or whether you're trying to scale to a multi-million-dollar business. And they help you comfort those conditions, whether you need accounting, whether you need finance, whether you need law, whether you just need to bounce your ideas off of someone. So I was working in marketing communications at this incubator for about a year. And when I was doing a presentation, two of the co-founders that I'm working with right now, Zach and Corey, actually met me at the conference. And they said, hey, we need to bring on someone in the business development side of the company. We need someone to lead sales, partnerships, marketing, and you seem like you're a great fit to do so. So when I made that transition, I said to myself, I have really two big things that mean a lot to me. One being, I want to work in a company that is small enough that I'll make an impact, and that when I wake up in the morning, I say, hey, what I'm doing means a lot to me. But secondly, I wanted to work for a company that was really for the patients. With a lot of companies out there that are a lot larger, I know that shareholders and all that kind of nonsense starts to get played into the business. I wanted to really be at the beginning and be able to impact patients in a very positive way, especially in a health system like Canada. So I made the leap, and I've been quite happy ever since, helping them grow the company since 2017.
Mm-hmm. What was that first conversation like when you first met your partners? Was that did they just kind of like approach you right off the bat, or was that like did you have to say, yeah, you know what, this is a really cool idea, I really want to work with you guys?
Yeah, funny enough, I actually know Corey from university. I used to live across from his girlfriend, and we just used to be sort of colleagues, not really anything else, just acquaintances, saw each other every once in a while. He knew I was in the biotechnology space. I knew he was in the digital health space, but really nothing else came of it. When we ended up meeting up at the conference again, he saw me, he saw what I've been doing, and he said, yeah, this is awesome. Come apply. Originally, actually, he was trying to point me into different startups and saying like, hey, go work for my friends over here. They're doing something cool. Hey, go work for these guys over here. They're doing something cool. And then I remember getting a call one day just being like, hey, we signed 2 to 3 hospitals. We need to start growing really quickly. We're looking for a BD person. I know you're looking around for a role like that. Come apply and then let's work together and try to grow this thing. So it was pretty exciting that I already knew Corey sort of coming into this, but not at a professional level. So it's been a great experience so far.
It's really good to hear. And I would say probably there's mixed experiences, right? I mean, like based on all the other companies and observations that you probably came across and that we hear about in on forums and news sites and stuff like that. It's not often the case that you're off to like a really good start. So, I mean, obviously having like a really good team that actually works together really well, it makes a big difference, right? Do you feel that?
Absolutely.
That team environment, is there something like unique about the group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of startups, and again, statistics tell you that a lot of startups are going to fail. So since day one, one of the biggest things that we do as a team is we make sure everyone has skin in the game. We make sure that everyone comes in and everyone is as passionate as we are to solve this problem within the healthcare space. So the team has definitely been one of the biggest drivers for why we've been able to move so quickly and get a lot of traction within the space, but really make a difference.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, no, that's really good to hear too. So, you mentioned that everybody was on the same page in terms of like the kind of problem that you guys are really aiming to solve. So I take it that there's a very particular niche, a specific area that you're working in, but that has big implications. So I wonder if we can dive into that. What was the main sort of problem that you guys identified that really needed to be addressed?
Yeah, so this might be a little long. I'll go past just the elevator pitch. But really, we live in a digital world. And when you look at the stats in Canada specifically, 85%, and that translates to about 31 million people, have access to a mobile device and are subscribed to a phone-based service. And in Ontario alone, which is where I live, that's about 90%, and it's only rising. So as a result, we recognize that everyone uses their smartphones for everything. It's your best and most ultimate tool. So because of this recent change where smartphones are now everyone's best tool, every industry starts adapting. When we look at the number of different industries, we see excellent customer services at the heart of these high-performing industries. In industry sectors outside of healthcare, there's a competitive focus on customer service that drives organizations to provide new services and meet the needs of their customers. And it's interesting because the financial and reputational success of a lot of these companies rests on their abilities to engage people in appealing ways. And in recent years, digital transformation outside of healthcare has really been the cornerstone in trying to deliver excellent customer service and improve consumer engagement. But when you look at healthcare, it's lagging. Even the generally healthy who interact with the healthcare system infrequently can find the experience vexing. So the contracts with other service industries could not be starker. And as people encounter more appealing and convenient digital services in all other walks of life, the disparity between their experiences with healthcare and other services just continue to grow. And as an example, you can order an an Uber directly to your door. You can look up reviews on an Airbnb in Spain and book it 6 months down the road. You can bank on your phone, take pictures of your checks on your phone and cash them, and invest in your favorite stock on your phone. But when it comes to the healthcare sort of context, why can't you access medical records? Why can't you access simple content? Why don't your hospitals or your care providers move towards the digital age a little bit quicker? And as a result, we realize that consumers expect more. A consumer phenomenon is happening, and especially within healthcare now, everyone expects to be able to receive this information on your device in a single location, just like all other aspects of life. So really what we've seen is, and coming to our idea, people consume information and it's changing. They have new expectations. They want pixels, not paper. They want customization, not generalization. And they want constant improvement, not planned obsolescence. And when you look at healthcare as a whole, you think of just a single experience. And when you go to the hospital, why do they still give me paper? Why do they still give me pamphlets? Why do they brush me aside after we leave and say like, okay, well, we'll see you 6 months down the road? I just don't think that experience should be there anymore. It almost feels inhuman to a point. So what we've started realizing as CoHealth, and getting to the point, but the best providers have reinvented themselves away from just the services they provide, because they realize it's all about relationships. Cleveland Clinic and Mayo Clinic, which are frequently cited as some of the best hospital systems in the world, are widely credited for jumpstarting this revolution in hospital content marketing. And perhaps the most experienced player in the space, Mayo Clinic, offers this extensive library of resources for potential patients to help them navigate possible diagnoses and treatment plans, etc. So really what we're trying to do is help patients better access this content and better access all of the information they need. CoHealth as a whole, and very, very simple, we are a content creation and distribution platform for healthcare organizations. And really what we've seen in the market to date is current methods to create and distribute trusted related healthcare content are expensive, time-consuming, and unorganized. The content lives in many places, many formats, and as a consumer, it's challenging to access. So what we do is we create this platform, work with health providers, health-related organizations, anyone who's looking to share content and access health consumers, to not only deliver this content in a better, more digital format, but then measure its performance, not only the content performance, but really patient interaction performance. How do you build a better experience? How do you build better outcomes? And how do you use digital to really bridge the gap between healthcare and patients?
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's definitely a lot to work with there. So I'll ask a couple questions following up on that. But no, I hear the main message or messages. Maybe there's definitely one of these big pieces is that there's the same I'm going to call it maybe mentality or the same approach that's happening, that's resulting in a lot of growth and a lot of innovation, a lot of industries outside of healthcare. People are looking into healthcare and thinking, okay, why is that same thing not happening? Why is there not the same level of service being provided to the patients in a healthcare setting? And there's a lot of interesting kind of comparison and contrast between the two. I mean, a customer that's buying a shoe is not necessarily as a customer that's seeking medical services, to simply feel better, or to be able to function properly in their day-to-day lives. So, but there's a lot of really interesting points that come out of that, and so maybe we can kind of break that down a little bit. So I know the information is obviously like it's a big challenge, right? Google or whatever. There's tons and tons of websites that have so much information. A lot of websites that are actually accredited. They're backed by medical organizations or specialty groups or what have you. So there's a lot of great information out there for people to access. But it's not as simple as just typing in a website and going and starting to read. There's a disconnect. It's like, what do you do with that information once you have it, even if you're a patient and you're motivated enough to actually go and find that information? So there's got to be a connection between the information and the provider, and it sounds like CoHealth is really tapping into that. It's not only helping patients like access the information and in some kind of organized way, but also how do you act on that information, and how do you act on it in a coordinated way with your provider? Is that sort of the thought process behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you could look at other content sharing applications right now, like for example, Twitter. Twitter is one of the most widely recognized content sharing applications in the world. And it's funny to see some hospitals on Twitter sometimes because they're sharing updates about their hospital, but when it comes to actual content that means life or death, they don't have a platform for that. And it's just interesting to see how they're struggling to adapt and struggling to move into that sort of the realm of possibilities for how to get better content to better patients at the right time, at the right place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The other interesting thing here is that it's not because it's a content creating and sharing platform, but it's not specific to like a certain therapy or disease or something like that, right? It has like wide ranging applications. So essentially, let's say if I'm a patient and I have the flu, or I have flu like symptoms, I need to go find out what's going on, and then so I feel like this would be a really interesting example to go through. So what would I do and how would I make use of CoHealth as an app? And then how does that connect me with clinicians and so on? Like if we go through that
Yeah,
pathway, what would that look like?
great question. Great question. So right now we're at the early stages of the company. We've been around for about 4 years. And traditionally what happens at the current moment is 95% of the users on our platform are being referred the platform by their primary or acute care physicians. So if you went into the flu and your physician happened to be signed up with the platform, they could say, hey, here's CoHealth, here's how to access all the information about the flu. Questions, symptoms, concerns, everything will be uploaded on the application. If any of these problems arise, please come back to the office. Make sure that if any of these serious ones arise, you go to the urgent care clinic or the emergency room, etc. What we are doing in the future and what we've realized is we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves. So if a hospital is not on the application, if you go and you say like, hey, I got CoHealth at one hospital, but I can't get it at this other hospital, how do I access the information? What we've realized is there are many, many, many health-related organizations out there who act as content creators. So it's not just about the hospitals. It's not just about these service providers that you're going in and you're hoping to get better. There's different organizations like Diabetes Canada. There's organizations like Heart and Stroke Foundation. There's medical device companies. There's pharmaceutical companies. And they are content experts in the space. So for us, it's about how do we get the application in the hands of patients? One would be through those distribution channels, which are the care providers. But then secondly, once we've established a distribution channel, how can we give all of these different organizations a spotlight to share this information, to allow them to then gather, collect, and measure performance throughout sort of not only their care journeys, but through the privatized companies and the public companies that want to host their content.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so there's definitely there's benefits from multiple perspectives here. So from a patient's perspective, you have the ease and the convenience to be able to access this information from your cell phone, anytime, anywhere, in real time, and you can actually communicate with your provider through the application as well, or they can monitor some of your information.
Yeah, so they can monitor some of the information. The application to date does not collect any personal health information. So what we do is we allow the patient to provide feedback on their experience, on their outcomes, et cetera. But right now, the service provider has no idea who's actually providing that information. So we've created this utility tool that allows you to access content and report back some things. But other than that, at the moment, it's completely anonymized for the patient's privacy.
Okay. And then as a provider, what kind of questions would a provider, let's say, be interested in answering through, if this is like continuous information that's coming in from a patient, again, going back to the flu example, let's say they need to monitor their, temperature or something like that, or, their fluid intake or something like that. So that might be information that's definitely useful to a clinician. Can they see that kind of information, or can they request that kind of information?
Yeah, so it really depends at the moment. If you're a patient, so let's say your physician hands you the application, you went to primary care, so it's just your GP, and they said, hey, I think you have flu-like symptoms. Here's the CoHealth application. Here's an access card. I think you should be downloading the flu care plan. And with that care plan, hopefully you can access and answer all the questions when you transition back home. The idea is that each physician does something a little bit different. And when you talk to physicians about WebMD or any of these IMD sites or any of these sites that may give you these generic topics or generic pieces of information, they usually cringe and they usually say like, hey, these aren't right. Don't bring me this information. So what we do, what we were trying to do is give each physician sort of the platform to voice how they want to deal with each of these different things. Physician A and physician B at the same clinic may provide different information for flu symptoms. And unfortunately, that's the sad reality of this world. We'd like to see care standardized, but it just isn't yet. And it's not going to be standardized for a while. So how do we give the physicians a voice to let their patients access information relevant to what they would do? But at the same time, if a patient needs flu information from physician A and they know that they're using the CoHealth application or they're registered on it. It's that easy. Maybe we can avoid a phone call. Maybe we can avoid a visit. Maybe we can avoid going to the emergency room. And what the idea is how do you put the patient at the center of their journey? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we are a patient-facing application. So yes, we may generate some efficiencies within the system, but ultimately, how do we make sure that the patient is caring for themselves and has this, I like to call it a case manager almost, that's with them every step of the way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I like the way you put it. It's patient focused. It's not so your target audience would, it might incorporate providers, but at the end of the day, this is about enhancing the care that's actually provided to the patient from their perspective, right? So I mean, like if you're going on the app, you can look for the organization that you need to go get your healthcare at. You would sign up, if I understand correctly. You would make the connection to a particular provider, and then you can start entering information. But it's from your perspective. It's patient reported.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you think of it in sort of a content marketing perspective, you can think of content marketing almost as a handshake deal. You'll provide content that consumers, patients, can use to improve their health and their lives. And if you fulfill your end of the bargain, with integrity, obviously, when they or their families need healthcare services, they'll want to come back to you. And it's a little bit more apparent in the US because in the US, obviously, healthcare is a little bit privatized. But in Canada, I think it's turning in sort of the same leaf. We are consumers. We are health consumers. We have choices. Our healthcare system may be free, but at the end of the day, we still have a choice if we want to go there. And if you go on Google now and type in a hospital and you can see a hospital's reviews, it's pretty interesting because it can turn some people away. If you see like, hey, a bunch of people had a bad experience with orthopedic surgeon or surgery, even if it wasn't the physician's fault, maybe it was due to complications in the community. It's going to leave a sour taste in your mouth. So how can you position yourself when you're a service provider, like a primary care physician or a surgeon, to be the best content marketer in the space? Because really, surgery A and surgery B may be completely different. The patient won't know that. What they know is the experience they had that's attached to that journey. And really what we're trying to do is improve that experience.
Okay. Is there an opportunity, like do patients have the opportunity to actually say, like leave a review essentially, right? I mean, can you say, I had an awesome experience with this physician, highly recommend them. And then is that kind of information, would it be like shared like publicly, so that even if it's anonymous by the individual patient, but like can other people see that kind of information?
So right now, unfortunately, no. The providers that are receiving the feedback get that feedback directly. Whether they choose to use it or not, it's completely at their discretion. In the future, we are looking to build this community of healthcare providers and health reviewers and really be able to build a community of this content and the organizations associated to the content. But to this date, no, unfortunately not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, I think it's a really cool idea for sure. Okay, so we learned a little bit about how the CoHealth app works, and I'm still really curious. Going back to how this started to begin with. So obviously, there were a lot of interesting conversations that are happening around the time, and obviously like a huge gap that needed to be addressed. And I wonder the first few steps that happened in creating CoHealth. I wonder if you can take us back to when that happened. Did you guys go for like funding? Was there like sitting around a table at a coffee shop and just kind of brainstorming ideas? Was that kind of what happened?
Yeah, so I can tell the story. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I wish I was, but I can definitely reproduce the story in my own words. So Zach and Corey met during a contest called Kiss My App. And it was a contest hosted here by a hospital system, William Osler. And essentially what they said is, you guys have a week. We're going to build your teams, and you guys are going to essentially build a healthcare application or a mock healthcare application. And at the time, Zach was doing his JD MBA at Osgood at York University. Corey was doing his health policy management master's at U of T. And they ended up coming together and with a couple of developers to form this group. And it was actually pretty funny because when Corey and Zach met, the only reason they knew each other was because Zach was dating Corey's sister. It's not isn't happening anymore. But It's a pretty funny story that our company started off of Tinder. But
That's a great ad right there.
yeah, but essentially what happened was they got this team together. They said to themselves, let's create an app to help with emergency room inefficiencies. The emergency room is complex. There's a lot of people that flow through it. A lot of people, or physicians, don't have a lot of time to actually deal with everyone. So they said, let's create this application. And if a patient comes in with something simple, a leg break, a sprain, a concussion, this is standardized information. We do the same protocol and we hand out that same information regardless of any of those very standardized pathways. So what they did was they built a mock application. They put a couple care pathways on it, the ones that I had just named, and they presented it at the Kiss My App competition. Zach, our CEO currently, was the one who was presenting it. Long and behold, he won the $25,000. And him and Corey had a really tough decision afterwards. They sat down with the rest of the team members and they said, is this a potential business opportunity? Can we generate revenue? Can we turn this into a SaaS model? And can we help the healthcare system? So a couple people said no, a couple people said yes. And long and behold, 3 years later, Zach and Corey are the only two that were part of that original group that are still around. But it's interesting. Our story didn't just stop there. Obviously, $25,000 isn't enough to start a company up, especially when you're in downtown Toronto, and that's probably rent for about a month. So they had to sit down and they had to say, well, how do we start getting early validation? How do we start seeing if this idea is feasible? So they did what every salesperson does best. They started knocking on every door of every hospital in Ontario. Believe it or not, I believe they went to about 30, 40, 50, 60 of them before someone finally said yes. And it's interesting because you think, hey, they came to them with its application. And as young aspiring entrepreneurs always think, you're going to build some type of product and it's going to be done. You're going to be able to sell it. But no, they went to them with pieces of paper that had wireframes on them. And they said, hey, if we built out this application, would you guys use it for free? Obviously, because it's healthcare. No. And then finally, Markham Stouffville Hospital back in 2016 said, if you guys build out this application, we will use it in our emergency department. And again, to date, they've still been one of our best clients. They help us refine the application. They've helped us grow as a company. And ever since, we have just been able to use them as a continuous referral flywheel, really being able to grow the business and saying, hey, this is where we started and this is not where we were ending.
Mm-hmm. So this is a fascinating point to me. What does that actually say about the need to drive or really to push a free solution to a problem that hard before somebody bites? I imagine that there are differences across healthcare systems. There are different, maybe the way that it was pitched, that there's a lot of different factors, but I think there's something to be said about it's a free application. It has a very specific area that it's trying to solve a problem in, and yet everybody was saying not so much. Is that because everyone's really comfortable with the way things are, or they're uncomfortable with where things are, and they don't know how to get out of it?
I think healthcare is just lagging in that regard. There's a lot of just pushback, and there's a lot of, they just want to do things in very traditional ways. It's interesting because it's like, sure, you're in a highly complex, highly regulated industry, but that's no reason that healthcare and content marketing can't go together like peanut butter and jelly. Why, you ask? And because you already have one of the most valuable assets that all content marketers desire most. You already have your consumers' trust. People are going to come in, people are going to believe in you, people are going to trust you, and they're going to access this application. And really, at the end of the day, it funds their business model. Where I see the lag, and really where I see the big problems when it comes to healthcare and adoption of technologies like this are the lack of access to the healthcare ecosystem, the lack of funding available, and then finally the lack of policy to help businesses like mine scale. For example, we sell to one hospital and down the road there's another one, even though it's being paid for by the same administrative body. They have to go through a completely new privacy and security policy. They have to go through their whole individual contract. They have to make sure everything is private and secure, and they have to make sure that they're getting the same price everyone else is getting. And it's pretty ridiculous in this day and age when other industries are going through RFP processes that make it very fair and competitive. And then you have hospitals and healthcare who are privately or publicly funded by the government, who are still sort of in a stone age when it comes to adopting new technologies. So it's interesting to see, and there's definitely challenges when it comes to actually going and seeing if people are interested and will be using the application. Where I started turning my focus on, or lack of focus on, is if you're not going to be part of this digital shift, if you don't believe in the digital shift, if you're old school, if you believe the paper and the pamphlets and the analog way of doing things are perfect and they don't need to change, you're probably not the right person for us anyways. Because really, at the end of the day, we're trying to make a change. We're trying to push towards this digital shift where other industries have gone 20, 30 years ago.
So we'll definitely come back to the point of where CoHealth fits within the larger healthcare system, including in terms of governance of the healthcare system. We'll touch on that because it's probably alongside the need for digital solutions is probably perhaps even more important is the people that are actually creating the policies on how to use these things. So we'll touch on that again. But I wanted to focus a little bit on some of the insights that you've gained from in your role in the last couple of years as the business development person in the company. What are some of the ways that you found that people push back? What are some of the key ways? Aside from just this thinking that either it's too difficult or it's not for them, what are some of the key drivers of acceptance, and what are some of the key factors that people have brought up that prevent them from taking on this new tech?
Yeah, I actually think the biggest one that I get as a pushback is we're developing our EMR strategy right now. We're implementing our EMR right now. We don't have the time to do anything like this. And I don't want to say it's an excuse, because I know a lot of hospitals are really working hard to develop these EMRs and implementing them. However, I think we are or at least Canada is very focused on these EMR integrations. They're receiving failing grades from physicians across the board, and they're completely focused on the hospital system. They're focused on improving efficiencies with physicians, with nurses, with frontline staff, and they're focused on developing these profiles for patients. So that's usually the biggest pushback. And it's interesting because...
So I was going to ask, what do they mean by profiles of patients?
So when you go into the hospital, instead of having everything paper-based and, hey, the records of your last 20 years are available via this paper and in the back room in a cupboard, they're all online on the EMR. So they're tracking them and they have all their information from life till death.
Gotcha. Okay.
What I don't think they realize is the EMR doesn't benefit the patient. And it may not for the next 20, 30 years. When I know a lot of these EMRs may have patient portals, but when you log on a patient portal, okay, great, my urea levels might be a little high and my blood glucose levels might be a little low, but besides that, what do my charts tell me as a patient? Why does that really matter to me? So it's interesting to see how we're trying to improve efficiencies within a system like Canada by focusing on provider-facing technologies when I think the real problem is really, how do you target patients? How do you help them shift into sort of this new way of thinking? How do you make them shift their behavior to get better at providing for themselves as opposed to letting the system provide for them?
Mm-hmm. So that part isn't, there's an entire field, or maybe multiple fields, right, within healthcare research, health services research, and so on, about how do you encourage behavior change. I think it's even a part of public health is tapping into this as well. But that's a good question. Really, how do you get people to change their behaviors? Or is healthcare supposed to be more reactive? Once patients have a problem, they have to access the healthcare system, and then you have to manage them that way. So is one of the goals, maybe what part of the vision of CoHealth, is that to influence behaviors to maybe prevent or limit the number of times that a patient has to interact with the healthcare system?
I don't want to say that just yet, because that'd be putting ourselves pretty high up there. But ultimately, I think education is power. It's if you can provide good information and you can provide relevant care at the right time to make people make impactful decisions, as opposed to going on WebMD and thinking they may have cancer, potentially down the road. For right now, I think what we're trying to realize is, or at least where we're trying to line up is, we see the digital age coming. We see everything happening on smartphones. Let's get healthcare there as well. We started with the content because the content's the easiest. If you were to tell a healthcare organization what's the hardest, what's your biggest interaction point with the patient, it's providing them relevant information so when they go home, they're ready. So if we can get people on the platform to make them realize that, hey, this is important, the possibilities then do become endless later on down the road. But for us, I don't think we're not trying to do too much at once. We don't want to be a chameleon when we go to the healthcare system. We want to be very refined and honed in with the focus that we're providing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how, a question popped into my mind. How many customers, so you mentioned that you've grown the company primarily in terms of the number of hospitals. I think it's grown from something like 3 back in the day to over 40, maybe well over 40. Is that still the ballpark in terms of the number of customers?
Yeah, so we're sitting at about 50 customers right now.
Okay, and these are like primarily hospitals?
Hospitals and primary care, yes.
Okay, okay. Just out of curiosity, if you had to take a guess, how many patients do you think that's impacting?
So to date, we've seen about 78,000 patients on the platform.
Jeez, wow.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them, if it's not too proprietary, but how many of them, I'm curious, would be let's say consistent or active users on the platform?
Active users. So we're seeing monthly active users sitting at around 1,800 to 2,000. It's fluctuating up and down a little bit, but yeah, roughly about 2,000 monthly active users.
Okay, this is interesting because it's so this is a good chunk of patients that are regularly going through the healthcare system. So potentially these are patients that are this is that top, maybe 5% that we hear people talk about, of patients that are actually costing the healthcare system. And not to put it from that perspective only, but there's a certain fraction of people that ever go through the healthcare system that end up costing the healthcare system the most, just because they tend to be the sicker patients who need the most help. So is that the group of patients that the app right now is sort of tapping into? Is it reflective of that? And this might just be a hypothesis.
Yeah, so right now, and again, this is a stepping stone approach. We're focusing very much on patients who are going down these standardized care pathways. So if you come in for a total hip replacement, you use the application. If you're going in for cancer, you use the application. If you go in for a rare disorder, unfortunately, the application is not for you right now, just because we're trying to hit the population as opposed to trying to hit very refined sort of disorders and diseases. So right now, we are taking into account many of the disorders and diseases that do cost the system a lot of money: childbirths, oncology, cardiac, orthopedics. So those are big focuses on the platform at the moment. But as we expand and as we grow, it's not just about those standardized care pathways. Because from a patient's perspective, okay, once I get my papers on my heart failure, awesome, I have to go back to the hospital again if I want to learn more about my diabetes. So what we're trying to do is really provide this platform that, again, going back to one of those things, we're not trying to plan obsolescence. We really want to be able to allow customization. If you have heart failure and you're managing diabetes and you have low cholesterol and you happen to be taking this medication because of it, you should be able to get all those pieces of information customized for you in an application. Right now, we are basing the distribution off of those standardized pathways. But as we improve and add functionality to the application, really what we're looking to do is build out this customization. So it's not a snapshot, it's life to death. If you have a flu, if you have heart failure, if you have a heart stint, whatever it happens to be, we want you to be able to access that information. And then maybe 10, 20 years down the road, if you forgot what you were doing back then, but it happened to work, we want you to remember it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Rob, we'll shift a little bit here and just talk about, as you're growing the number of hospitals that you're bringing on board. And just as a side note, so I'm guessing the majority of the hospitals aren't in Ontario, or have you guys branched out to other provinces, maybe US or Europe, or are you looking to go in that direction?
Yeah, so we're currently in Canada, in Ontario and BC, and then we're in the US as well. We are talking to different provinces across Canada, and then again, we're looking at international opportunities as well. I think with the application, really content is across the board needed in every aspect of healthcare, whether you're taking a drug, whether you're going in for surgery, whether you have something simple as a flu. So for us, it's about really proving value here. Canada is a good playground to do so. We're relatively low population. Genuinely, everyone has a smartphone. And at the end of the day, I think that we are one of the leaders for healthcare education. So once we've developed this footprint here, being able to spread that success across the globe then becomes more of a play.
Okay. I'm sure everybody's interested in hearing that too. But going back to the question I meant to ask, so as you're growing the number of partnerships with the variety of healthcare stakeholders, and not just hospitals, private clinics, and so on, I'm sensing that there will probably be a greater and greater need to also interact with healthcare administrators and branches of government that are also regulating and governing all of healthcare. Have you guys tapped into that yet, or are you part of those conversations?
We are starting to have those conversations, and I think we've realized that we're distributing ourselves in providers right now, but healthcare doesn't stop at just the providers. A snapshot or the acute care system, the primary care system, maybe you may spend 1% of your time there, but ultimately you're spending 99% of your time in the community managing care from many, many, many different organizations, not just the providers. So we are starting to have those conversations as we realize it's about the journey, not just the snapshot.
Mm-hmm. No, well said. There's a lot of different people that come into play to ever make healthcare possible and to make healthcare access possible for patients. Okay, one of probably the most fascinating topics to me whenever I have a conversation like this is just this link between, or maybe the lack of a link between education, so what you initially intend to do when you're going to school, and then what you end up doing when you get out of school. And I know you mentioned that you were doing your master's, you were working full-time and doing your master's, and you managed to do both really well. So congrats on that end. And you were heading initially in one direction, decided to go in a different direction. I wanted to tap into this conversation a little bit about, what's the, how would you tell people that they should approach education versus what they really want to do, or how to apply their education? Because for you and I, maybe we had similar experiences in the sense that, training was in one field, but really we might want to go in a slightly different direction, or we have ambitions and goals to go in a different direction. So is there a mismatch there? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, no, this is a topic that's very close to my heart. So traditionally, I think that schooling and education is very valuable, and I think that as you travel and navigate through sort of the education system, you need to do what you find is most relevant to you. You need to care. You need to wake up in the morning and say, hey, I love what I'm doing. I love what I'm learning about. Let's keep this going. Where I disagree with the education system is sort of the closed box thinking. I do a lot of talks about entrepreneurship and starting a company up, and how education teaches you how to be a physician and a nurse and a physiotherapist, but they never teach you how to start a digital health company. They'll never teach you like, hey, this is how to raise money, and hey, this is how to foster an idea, and hey, this is how to manage employees. So when I meet entrepreneurs who are still within the educational system, I give them the opportunity to expand those horizons. They should be meeting with incubators. They should be meeting with mentors. They should be meeting with people who are smarter than them and have done what they want to do prior to that. I love school, and trust me, I want to go back to school one day to do my MBA. But when you look at the opportunities that you learn within a startup, I don't think I would have been sitting in front of a board of a hospital in any other career if I had gone down the pharmaceutical route. I don't think I could be making system level changes with a digital platform that we built in-house if I went down one of those other paths either. So it really depends, because did my master's teach me anything about what I'm doing to this date? A little bit. It taught me how to network. It taught me how to leverage a network. It taught me how to do simple things within the business world. But really at the end of the day, I think if you have a dream and if you have a passion, definitely get the education you need, but hone in on that passion, especially when you're young. You don't want to have a family and grow old and try to start a company up, because those 70, 80-hour weeks are definitely not for you at that point.
No, agreed. Although, I mean, I guess you can make the argument too that as if you're moving up the ladder, then eventually it just gets harder and harder. But by that point, you're probably already settled down. I would imagine so. On average, a lot of people are, but it's difficult nonetheless. And so taking a risk, if you will, when you're earlier and trying to go down the startup route, maybe that is something better that's done early rather than later. But I mean, who am I to say? I'm not. I don't have that experience yet. So you also mentioned mentors, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what mentorship means to you, and if mentors are part of your growth that you've really relied on, or is that something that's really kind of on and off, or not been that essential?
Yeah, no, I think mentors have been critical to my growth. What's interesting about a startup, and especially with my co-founders, we're all quite young, so we don't have the experience per se in the space yet. When it comes to selling and marketing and especially doing that on a budget, because we have a limited runway, it becomes very difficult. I've never managed someone in my life prior to this position, and now I'm managing 5, 6, 7 people at a time. So relying on my mentors becomes very, very critical and very crucial for my success. I only get to see them about once or twice a year, even though I have about 4 or 5 of them. But I think within those 2-3 hours that I get to spend with them, I go over exactly what I need. I've written down my problems prior to the meeting, and really they focus on their experience, because that's what I think is the most valuable. They can give me their opinion, they can give me what they think is best, but ultimately that experience and what they've been through is what makes me, or what at least allows me to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then I guess a mirror question to that is how important has it been to just to learn by trial and error, as opposed to learning by learning through someone else's experience. There's no direct path, right? It's not a linear path to go from an idea to a successful startup and to a well-oiled machine of a company that's servicing a lot of people. So how do you do you have to, was it like 2 steps forward, 1 step back? Was it, or did you have guidance on clear decisions along the way?
Never. No, we never have clear decisions along the way. We're always brainstorming. We're always trying to figure out what's the next best step is. What I think is the most interesting for us is, and what we've realized really quickly as a young company, especially in a B2B2C business model, where we're selling to the providers, but ultimately the end user is the patient. We've realized that even though the providers may want something, that's not necessarily what the patients want. So yes, the providers are the ones funding our operations, but really at the end of the day, it's the patients using the application. And who's going to benefit from it the most? The patients. And if the patients benefit from it the most, it trickles back to the providers. So we've stopped necessarily listening to the people who are paying us, and we're focused more on their customers. But I think that transition and really understanding what they value is what we need to be doing in a space like digital health, especially when it's consumer facing. That alone, that decision and that mindset took us years to even understand, because we always said, hey, the provider knows best. They're in the healthcare space. They know exactly what they want. But as Henry Ford once said, if he had asked his customers what he wanted, they would have said a faster horse. They don't know what they want until you deliver it to them. So what we really did was focus on the end user, and focus on the problems that they're facing. And really, I think the dominoes stacked in place after that.
Mm-hmm. And I think in an ideal world, maybe the entire industry focuses on what's actually best for patients, and there's a lot of clutter to get through to get at that, but that really is the crux of the point of the entire industry. So with that point said, I wanted to close on rather, I think the central kind of point of conversations like this is really that technology is definitely an important part of the transition that healthcare is going through, and there need to be players like CoHealth, like yourself and your partners that are pushing for that change. At the same time, though, there's multiple pieces, right? And multiple things need to be changed and transformed for healthcare to improve. And I wonder if you can just kind of maybe just in general comment on that. We talked a little bit about the fact that there needs to be policy change, and there needs to be thinking, mindset changes, and so on. Is there anything else that you find is a really key factor to facilitate the technology transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's trying to do something, and I'm sorry, when I say everyone, I mean, I think every company is trying to do something different. I think we're all trying to compete with each other. I think that everyone's sharing or keeping ideas to themselves, keeping partnerships to themselves. I don't think the system's going to change by one company taking lead. And that is really what we preach for on a day-to-day basis. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's not about competing with each other. It's really about how do we push the system forward as a whole, not by individual pieces. Because when I go to a hospital and my digital health friend down the road goes to the hospital, he may be doing something completely different, but we're competing for that attention, and we're competing for the funding, and funding's limited. And we're competing for ideas and time and policy. And it's not like an industry like banking where, okay, this generates a clear-cut ROI. You guys are better. Oh, you guys have a little bit better service. Yeah, we want to buy you. It's long. It's the process. Is very strenuous. Sales cycles are 12 to 18 months. So you can't just make up your mind and say like, hey, I'm going to go and target this hospital and then give up in a couple of weeks. So what we found works the best is if we can bring these companies together, bring these ideas together, and create an idea that isn't competing against each other, but actually working together to make everything run a little bit more smoothly. I think that's the way we need to be going. Getting everyone on the same page, I think, is a little bit different or difficult. But again, I think we're going to get there eventually.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine in a field where you've got so many smart people in the same room and trying to make decisions together and competing interests and so on, it's going to be really difficult to do that. But I would agree. There's got to be a lot more cohesion in the approaches and a lot more working together than butting heads. And I guess time will tell. But really appreciate all the effort that you guys are putting into making this sort of thing happen. I can always vouch for a collaborative approach being a much better approach than a competitive approach, at least in this industry. So I certainly appreciate what you guys are doing. Okay, Rob, I just want to say thank you for your time today. And before we close off, I'll give you the last note. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we close off?
Yeah, I guess from my side of things, if there are any patients out there, if there are any physicians out there that are listening, feel free to get in contact with us. We're always happy to listen, to learn, and hear what problems need to be tackled next. As I mentioned in this podcast, we can't do this without everyone. If we were inventing our ideas and trying to build something that we thought was the right thing, we'd be digging ourselves a grave. So the responses and the feedback we get from individuals within the communities, working within the space, or maybe just going through tough times are what helps us grow and really what makes us passionate to do what we do best.
Mm-hmm. All right, well put. I'll make sure to link to the company in the description, just so that everybody knows. Is it? Are you guys on social media? If you could just share.
We are, yeah.
Yeah,
we are.
And what would be your handle?
We are at CoHealth App.
Okay, perfect. And if everybody wanted to check out the website or download the app on their phone, where can they find that?
It's cohealthapp.com.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks everybody for watching. This has been Dorian as your host and Rob Iaboni from CoHealth. We'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Dorian. Really appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye.